What's up, everybody? How you doing? Hope everybody's good and warm today. I know that I am. We've got Mark. Hey, Mark, good to see you, buddy, and Elliot up already. And I know this is kind of short notice and everything. I appreciate you guys coming at such short notice. I am actually working on a tutorial, not a tutorial, but a review, I guess, of the. I don't know if you've heard of it or not. It's the PSP PSP Saturator. It's the new Saturator plug that's coming in. And if you're Mixed Coach member, you saw me kind of go into it a little bit inside the membership site. Very brief. I kind of went into it a little bit more detail in this tutorial, but I'm still editing it, and it will come out later today. So, so we're getting 2 doses today of Mixed Coach stuff. Okay, hope you don't mind. Let's see. Hey, Rolf, good to see you, buddy. I wonder if you got any snow like we did. This is the third time it snowed in 2 weeks, I think, which is, from some of my friends that are moving here from California, is unusual. Usually in California, you drive to the snow. It doesn't come to you necessarily all the time, but welcome to Tennessee and the South, right? Hey, Bill, good to see you. Rolf, you got some snow, it sounds like. Well, we did too. Was this bad? Actually, this last snow was the perfect snow because the roads were warm enough that the snow didn't stick to the roads. So you've got all this beautiful, lush snowscape, and the roads are perfectly clear to go. So we went driving yesterday a little bit to check out things, and it was absolutely gorgeous. So anyway, so the PSP Saturator tutorial, not tutorial, it's a review. I did a couple things that I think you'll find interesting. You would think that a saturator would add more bottom end to something or warm things up, but I'm actually using it on 2 different occasions to actually thin things out a little bit. So be on the lookout probably in the next couple hours of that tutorial coming out. And I'll let you guys know on the Mixed Coach email list. By the way, if you're not on it, it's easy to get on the email list. Just go to, let's see, there is a link, a workshop, mixedcoach.com/workshop. There's a workshop there. And when you do the workshop thing, I'll make sure that I keep you in touch with all the things that we do here. And of course, if you're a member, which by the way, I'll go ahead and do a little pitch there. If you're not a member, you need to be. If you are a member, you'll get notifications of this kind of thing all the time. Right now, I just added until the end of the month free trial. It's a 30-day free trial for Mixed Coach member, and give you a good chance to come and meet some of these fine people that show up on the live broadcast every week. So the PSP AudioWare coming out a little later today, and then I'm teaching this class, and it's a college class, and I'm actually teaching 2 classes now. One's a college class, and one's a high school class. And I thought it might be cool since we're supposed to start it yesterday, but yesterday was Martin Luther King Day, and a lot of schools were out. So I thought I would start putting together this brief history of recorded music. And although this is not going to be as in-depth as the thing that I'm going to be putting out, but members, you'll get to see this thing when I completely get it done. But I found some pretty interesting facts this morning. I did not realize, or I had forgotten, that Bing Crosby was the guy who brought Les Paul the first reel-to-reel recorder, and then Les Paul got the idea to take the heads and stack them up, or somehow sync them up to get multi-track recording. And then I did not realize this either, that Les Paul and Mary Ford, which was his wife, she was a great singer. They would sit and do. He was like the first at-home recording guy. You think of Owl City sitting there, programming beats and grooves and stuff like that, and all these DJs that are sitting at home on their laptops. Les Paul was the first guy to do that. Him and because I heard some stuff today where he and his wife would sit there and just record up to 24 tracks. What they would do is they would bounce down. They would record 4 4 tracks, and they would mix the 4 tracks of guitars down to 1 track on a secondary machine, and then they would record 4 more tracks, second track. So they got up to 24 tracks. I can show you the video. I'll put it in the links later on. I can show you the video of them doing this, which was really pretty cool. Les Paul was he was an anomaly. We are enjoying a lot of the fruits of his labor. The fruits have grown into more fruits, and what I wanted the guys to know in the college class and in the high school class is just how good we've got it right now. I mean, I'm sitting here. First of all, I'm broadcasting all over the world right now from my studio with a laptop and a camera and a couple of lights, and hopefully it looks and sounds good. But to do this in the 40s and the 50s would have taken hundreds of thousands of dollars. And then when you talk about recording, it would have, if you could have even done it, it would have taken hundreds of thousands of dollars. I've talked to it before, but I've talked to about this before, just how appreciative I am of the technology. And so one of the technology things that are not working right now is my autofocus. You notice I'll sit right here, so I'll be in focus. Maybe I look a little better out of focus. Anyway, let's go to the comments real quick. Let's see. Elliot had a big snowstorm there near Lake Arrowhead. Wow. Yeah, I remember we were talking about, we went to Big Bear when we first moved to California, and there was, I'm not kidding, I think there was 5 feet of snow in 2016. Maybe, Elliot, maybe you can check my math on that. But we actually rode up to Big Bear, and it was gorgeous, very gorgeous. Bill McDonald's here. Stephen Klein, good to see you, bud. Let's see. Oh, didn't know that. Les Paul gave Steve Miller guitar lessons. Wow. That's pretty interesting. I saw an interview of him talking about him and Bing Crosby. And I didn't realize Bing Crosby was such a big contributor to multi-track recording the way it is, and just kind of went crazy from that. So let's see. Let me see if I can answer this question from Rodma. I don't know if it's haven't read it. Probably should have read it first. But Rodma says, what is the best way to mix vocal and piano and guitars? Where should they sit in the mix? Which element should be in stereo and how much? Okay, parts of this to me are a little straightforward, and I can tell you is that a vocal, is typically mono. I usually record vocals in mono, and I think most of the world does. I know of some mixers in the day. I'm trying to think of his name. He used to record everything in stereo. The guy that did, somebody help me out here. The guy that did all of Michael Jackson's stuff. He recorded even vocals, I think, in stereo. He recorded everything in stereo. But for the rest of us guys, most vocals are recorded in mono. So in my opinion, if you want dimension on a piano vocal and a guitar vocal mix, put the vocal in the center where I think it should go. And then if it's a vocal piano and guitar, if they're mono, I would just pull them outside of the center just a little bit. If they are stereo, I would still pull them out of the center. I wouldn't just do stereo guitar and stereo piano. I would find a way to make them sit in the mix to where if you closed your eyes, you could see the piano player sitting on the left, you could see the guitar player sitting on the right or whatever. That's what I would do. If they're mono, easy to do, just pan them 10 and 2, I would say. If they're stereo, I would just say, take the piano track, pull the right side in a little bit, guitar track, left side in, or, any combination of that. And then also you have your reverb for the vocal that can kind of give it a little bit of depth, a little bit of width, I guess, and depth. So hopefully, Ron, that answers you. So I would typically do how to keep, now you said how to make it sit in the mix. Now here's how I would make it sit in the mix. Since you're not competing with a lot of phase stuff, what I would do is I would turn it way down low, either in your headphones or in your monitors, and I would put it in mono. That's what I would do. And I would make sure that the vocal and the guitars basically this concept I call mixing for the moms. For you members, you've heard this before. I would just make sure that the guitar player's mom, listening at a low volume, could say, "That's my son playing guitar," and of course his mom needs to hear it, right? And then also the piano player, his mom needs to like it too. So if you mix down low and in mono, make sure that you can hear everybody. Then your vocal is going to sit about right. When you put it back in stereo, things could change a little bit, which is why we mix in mono some of the time. And then I would just kind of adjust and make sure that, there's nothing that by putting it in mono there wasn't any phase cancellation in the piano. Now you're not have to worry about this if the piano and the guitar were both recorded in mono. You shouldn't have to worry about that at all. It should just come out and be wider. If it is stereo and you've got a loud piano in its stereo and it goes down in volume quite a bit, you're looking at a phase problem. So that's another subject. But that's what I would do. I would mix low and in mono, and then I would spread it out and then kind of tweak it up from there. Don't use either all stereo or all mono as the de facto standard. You've got to kind of bridge the gap. As a good mixer, you got to bridge the gap there. Let's see. Still talking about snow here. 90 inches last year. I think we're about to break a record here in Nashville at 10 inches. So not complaining. So anyway, okay. So just a brief history of recording. Hang on, I got one more question here I want to answer. Then I just want to give you a very, very short synopsis of the timeline of modern day recording. Brume, that's a cool name, man. Can you get vocals to be impactful without parallel and minimum plugins? And when you use which over the other? I record most of my work on 2-track instrumentals. Okay, let me figure out exactly. Can you get vocals to be impactful without parallel processing and with minimum plugins? And when do you use which over the other? Okay, so yes, you can, but it takes a fader a lot of times, and it takes a little intention with the fader. You don't have to use parallel compression, although parallel does help a lot. I was using parallel compression when I saw Steve Marcantonio use it back in 1995 when I was mixing a record with him. I learned this from him, and I don't think anybody was doing it at that time. He was a groundbreaker, and I felt like I was kind of in the know there for a little while. You definitely can. It definitely does help, but I think modern day mixers think that you have to use parallel compression or parallel processing, which means basically over process something on one channel and not process it at all on the other channel and then mix them together. Most modern plugins now have a mix knob, and that's what that's for, is to get it unprocessed with processed. You can definitely do that without parallel. One thing you can do is just EQ it and just, don't overcomplicate things. Just if it needs a little top end, add a little top end. Don't try to go around the world to get a little top end. Just do that. So you can do that. You can't get vocals without parallel. I find that vocals become, depending on the style of music, I love 1176s, and I love to compress them at like 4:1, and I like for it to be about 60 dB of compression. And then, of course, you do that with the input, and then with the output, you just want to make up the gain to where it sounds the same whether it's bypassed or unbypassed. Not the same as compression, but the same volume. So you'll want to make up a little gain on the output, but you can definitely do that. That's how you get impactful vocals. Let's see. If you do most of your work on 2-track instrumentals, which means, I guess do you rap over, or do you sing over the instrumentals, or do you record everything to 2-track? Get back with me on that, if you will, and I'll finish up that question. Rodman had a follow-up question. Thanks a lot for your humble explanation. Thank you. I have one more question. There are 3 major parts of any song: melodic, instruments, drums, and vocals. Can you help me get the right order of levels of the 3 basic elements? Let's see. Melodic instruments, drums, and vocals. Okay, so it depends on the kind of music you're mixing, Rada. Uh, if it's a jazz record and it's a saxophone playing, then that's going to trump just about anything. So I use this concept that I feel like um, um, I hadn't heard of it before I mentioned it, but it's called, it's basically a mixing hierarchy. What you mix last, you mix loudest. So what you want to be loudest, you mix last. I learned this the hard way when I was trying to mix a record at the same time I was overdubbing it. And when I was overdubbing it, I couldn't get the overdub to sit in the mix. And it was because I was mixing it after the vocal and it was trumping the vocal every time. The way I corrected the problem was I took the vocal out and then made the overdub or the harmonica, what I was mixing, make it sit in the mix. And then I put the vocal back in and there it was sitting in the mix. So I would tend to do drums first, instrumentals, and then vocals because I mix a lot of vocal driven, lyric driven music where you have to understand all the lyrics. So that's what I do. If it's a real drum heavy thing and it's very beat driven, you might want to mix and it's maybe a vocal hook line that just comes in every now and then. That vocal hook line doesn't need to be featured. It's usually the instrumental and the drums. So try that and get back with me and see if that helps. Decide in your mind what is the most important thing to be heard. What are people going to say that drove the song? Whether it's a hook line for a singer singing it, or if it's a beat, or if it's a guitar solo or some kind of melodic line, mix those last. And then, what I mentioned to Brume, or, mix it in mono and see if it blends together a little better there. Okay. Hope that helps, man. Okay, so brief history. So I've been doing a little bit of research on this. I knew some of it, but the Les Paul thing was an epiphany to me. I didn't know. I had forgotten it. Bing Crosby. I love Bing Crosby, by the way. White Christmas is my all-time favorite movie, and I just hate that I'm going to take ridicule from watching White Christmas during the summer, which I'm not above doing that. I love that movie. I love the songs in it. I know Bing Crosby didn't like the movie that much, but the song, and I just love everything about it. Okay, don't take my man card because I like White Christmas, okay? Let's see. So basically, Thomas Edison created this it's a gramophone, but I'm not sure what he invented was a gramophone. If you guys know this, I'm still doing my research. But he created this thing with a cylinder, like think the size of a Coke can, a big Coke can on its side, and it was covered in wax or made of wax. And then there was a stylus or a needle that went into that. And then there was a big speaker that came out. There was no amplification yet. There was a big speaker looking thing that came out, and that's what you spoke into. And the sound of that, your voice going into the speaker, would move the stylus and record on that wax cylinder. And then to listen back, you had to listen to a certain way. And wax does not fare well in heat or anything like that. So at the same time, there was another thing. It was a plate. It was a flat disc, and it had a needle. And at the same time, you could record onto it, and I know you could listen back to it. And it had and it was called a gramophone. Now, the reason that the flat disc took off first is because it was a little cheaper to manufacture, and just like everything else, it was marketed better, right? So when you see the modern day Grammy, the Grammy Award, that is a gramophone right there. It has a big metal horn sticking out of it with a disc, and it plays. Okay, so then fast forward to World War II, the Germans were using tape, which I don't think anybody else had really taken into account. Now, before, people were using tape on the gramophone, on the disc, you would cut it to discs, which means if you listen to some of those old recordings, they had to get it right the first time. And if they didn't, they were wasting a big piece of there was no erasing it, going back and trying it again. It was like you either got it right or you had to buy another piece of a disc to record onto it, right? So you had to be onto it, which, that was a limitation of its day, and good things came out of limitations, and they always do. But then World War II, they discovered that the Germans were using tape to transmit messages to some of their allies and some of their generals and things like that. And the cool thing about the tape was that it was reusable. And you could actually say, oh, I meant to say this, stop it, and start it at this place, and then I'll say what I did. You could erase over it. You could hide anything that you had been saying. So it was like top secret. You could do that, and you could record over it again. After World War II, they brought some of these back to America, and I'm not sure that that this is what Bing Crosby gave to Les Paul, but it was in his car. He said he was expecting. You have to watch the interview. I'll try to leave a link to it, but he said he wasn't expecting a tape recorder. He was expecting some kind of fruit or something. But anyway, here comes Bing Crosby, gives this tape recorder out, and then Les Paul, after looking at it, modified it, and they started recording that. Now, a couple of weeks ago, I talked about watching the Beatles documentary. There's another thing, and this is really cool. This is not a simulation of modern day recording. It was modern day recording in its earlier phases, where, at one time you didn't worry about mixing consoles and multi-track mixing, because you only had one or two tracks. You didn't really have to mix them. You put them in there and then played it back, and that was about the best you were going to do. But if you watch the Beatles, what's the name of the documentary, guys? Get Back. That's on Disney Plus right now. It's really cool to see, because they had the mixing board, and they had the famous Studer 4-track recorder that they were using to do that. So we went from recording on a wax cylinder to a flat disc to a vinyl disc, which was the thing about that is you could record on both sides of that, whereas the other one you couldn't. So and then here we are, watching a Les Paul interview in the 50s where he'd recorded 24 tracks, and people thought he was just a genius, and he was, because he not only created multi-track recording, he created one of the best guitars ever in existence, right? The Les Paul. I've got one over there. But then, you go to that, and then we record on tape for a long time. And there were limitations with tape that made great things, but you had tape hiss. You could reuse the tape, but and then came along. This is when now I was lucky to be able to record in the 24-track tape phase, and where you only could record 24 tracks, and you had to do what you could do with it. I had no automation, so I had multiple. I had my buddy Jeff Collins was mixing vocals usually, and I was mixing music, and kind of minding how loud it went to the DAT machine, to the 2-track tape that we were using at the time. Not too long after that, we had modular digital recording. So at the time, you could get a Sony 48-track, which is what Tom Lord-Alge kind of settled on, I think, for the longest time, because 48 tracks, who could need more than 48 tracks, right? At the same time, 2 formats came out. And as I was talking about the cylinder and the disc, here's another example of that. Alesis made a thing called an ADAT. It was a VHS format, which is the big tape that you see. For you young guys that may not know what this is, it's VHS tape. Same kind of tape, basically, that we used to record our favorite TV shows on. Telling my age here. You could record 8 tracks on an ADAT, but the cool thing about it was you could get 2, 3, 4. I had 4 ADATs. You could lock them together most of the time. Not all the time, but most of the time you could get them all to run together. And then you could record up to 40, 48, whatever, how many tracks, how many ADATs you decided that you wanted to try to string together, you could do that. Now, there was another format called D88 that was put out by Tascam that was a high 8 tape, which is a smaller video looking tape about this wide, and it's smaller, not too much smaller than my cell phone here, probably about this size, the size of my daughter's iPod Touch. So one was marketed better than the other. So the ADAT really took off, even though the D88 was more stable. I had both of those thanks to some friends. Warren Drake, a friend of mine, let me use his for the longest time. I had 2 of those, and I could record 16 tracks, which is what was the standard in Europe. So I was able to take my 16-track D88s and go to Europe and record orchestra, which was amazing. But anyway, one was marketed better than the other, the ADAT versus the D88. And then I downloaded. Actually, I bought my first Mac in 97, I think, 97 or 98. It was the big green, teal-looking Mac tower. And I was able to put Digital Performer on that, which allowed me to use my ADATs to transfer tracks into the Digital Performer and then play them back in my Yamaha O2R. So I guess I'm telling my history of recorded music, but this is kind of what everybody was going through. And then so what I would do is I would record those through my digital console, which was an O2R, and I would use onboard processing and got a lot of mileage out of that thing. It was a wonderful, wonderful thing. Then in 1999, Ricky Martin recorded a song called Livin' La Vida Loca. And that was kind of one of the first songs, if not the first song, to be recorded completely in Pro Tools, which is something at the time I couldn't afford to get into, because Pro Tools, it took $13,000, $14,000 just to get started with Pro Tools at the time. I was using Digital Performer. I felt like I was getting the same results because I was able to edit tracks, mult tracks, automate tracks, and trigger things, tune things, all the advantages of Pro Tools, but at a much lower price range, because I think if you bought the hardware, that the software came with it. So I used that like crazy. Then 1999, Living La Vida Loca came out, and it was all recorded, no external anything. It was all internal verbs, all internal automation, all internal everything. And so then there comes another era where everybody's mixing what we call in the box now. So, and now, we have our choice of not just Pro Tools and Digital Performer, but we have our choice of several great DAWs. One I'm digging right now is called Reaper. And that's actually the DAW I'm actually teaching this new class in. So I wanted these high school kids and these college kids to understand just how much power that they're holding in their laptop or in their studio. It's not just something that you can pop open, and I think I even tend to take it for granted sometimes, just how much technology we're carrying around with us, not only in our pockets but on our laptops, right? So Bill, you're right, man. That was Bruce Sweetie. Bruce Sweetie. I'm sure that he was called that a few times, but his name is Bruce Sweetie. And he recorded everything in stereo, all the vocals and everything. But most everybody, go back to Brume or Radha, I can't remember which one, about the vocals. Vocals mono, most everything else, if you're producing, you want to think about how you record the other things so that mixing will be a little easier. Radha, somebody told me that vocals should be the loudest part of the song when it then comes drums and then instruments. Yeah, but I think, just loudest part of the song, that's an easy thing to accomplish. Just turn it up, right? But I think the art of being a mixing engineer is knowing how loud is too loud and how loud is loud enough. And some of the hacks that I just gave you about mixing in mono and mixing in a certain order will definitely help you to kind of navigate that. So yes, I do agree with that. Vocals should be the loudest part of the song, but just barely. I mean, not by a long shot anyway, because that's the difference between people just learning to mix, which you may be there, you may be an advanced mixer, I'm not sure, but that's the difference between, you can't really put your finger on how much louder a vocal is, it just feels better, right? So use those couple of tricks that I told you, and see if it doesn't help. And maybe you can come back next week and let me know your history there, okay, or your results. Elliot says he didn't like Irving Berlin. I think you may be right there. Irving Berlin wrote the song. I think he did like that. I think he didn't like the production of the movie. I think he felt like they threw it together and it wasn't paying homage to what a great song White Christmas was. And I think Irving Berlin wrote that song. I think he didn't like the. I think he didn't like the movie. I think he loved the song. Of course, who wouldn't? It's a great song. Hey, I'm glad you liked that. I'm glad you thought it was helpful. So anyway, so PSP review is coming out a little bit later. When I hang up this call, I'm gonna continue editing after I warm up my coffee. It's very cold right now, and also this is my wife's mug. So there, I'm talking about White Christmas, and I'm drinking out of a pink mug. I know what you probably think of me, but. Anyway, hey, thank you guys for coming today. Also, let me mention one more thing. If you Brume and Rada, personal invitation, come and check out Mixed Coach member for free for 30 days. We'd love to have you there. As a matter of fact, if you join today, you'll be able to join a call tomorrow, which some of the guys that are on this call, we're going to be talking about the new song we're mixing, which will be referenced in the PSP tutorial, and you'll be able to see the part I was talking about earlier when I was talking about, I had already mentioned it to my members. So mixcoach.com/free-trial. I would love to see you guys there. Come check it out. Okay. One last check on the comments here. Oh, Kevin, you taught us a few years ago of the difference between listening and hearing. Yeah. Bill, you've been a member for a long time, man. You probably remember more than I do about some of the stuff. But anyway, I'm glad you're here today, man. Let's see. Bill, Elliot, Rada, Brume, Stephen, Bill, Rolf. So glad you guys are here. Mark, hope you're still hanging on here. Hope to hear from you guys soon, okay? I'm going to end it here, and thanks guys for hanging out with me, and I will see you guys next week, okay? Look for a tutorial.